Hey, yo.
Hey, yo.
How we doing?
We doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Off the Dome Sports Podcast, your favorite sports podcast where two sports lovers sit on this couch and give their hot takes. Off the Dome. I am Redfish.
And I am Mustang.
We are the boys on Brightside, and we are presenting the Off the Dome Sports Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. If this is not, thank you for coming back.
Still welcome.
Still welcome indeed. So, as you can see, got our boy Joey B behind us. Glad to see him here. And, without further ado, let's get into some sports.
Let's get right into some disappointing news.
Yeah. So, first thing, we obviously have to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans from last night. Add it to the list of things you don't like to see.
Yeah.
So we were the 9 seed going against the 10 seed Oklahoma City Thunder, playing in the play-in game for a chance to play in a second game, which would then bring us into the playoffs if we could win that second one. But we couldn't even get past the first obstacle. We ended up dropping the game last night, 123-118 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was a home game. It looked on TV like the blender was popping. It didn't look like it was a bad atmosphere at all. It looked like people were really excited for the game. It was loud. It was chaotic. But we take the loss. Very unfortunate. Going over some quick stats, just seeing who did what. Brandon Ingram had himself a day, of course. He was kind of our best player over the past 3 months. I mean, he's our best player on the team without a doubt. But he's really, really played so well over the past 3 weeks or so. I think he was averaging something like 28, 7, and 8 or something. Like he was playing absolutely out of his mind. And then in this game, he has 30 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. He does everything you need him to do. Herb Jones played a game of his life as well. He had 20 points and, of course, was playing phenomenal defense like he always does. One of the best defenders in the league. Jonas was getting boards all night long, had 16 points, 16 and 18 for Jonas. And then Trey Murphy was hitting that three for you. He hit 4 threes in the game, had 21 points overall, perfect at the free throw line. So, if you look at the box score alone without really looking at who won, looking at the other team at all, you would think, hey, man, the Pelicans probably got a W in that game.
They played a pretty decent game, but when it just came down to it, we couldn't stop their scores.
Yeah, and the biggest problem we had in the game was really the third quarter. We go into halftime up by 6, kind of feeling, pretty good, but we got outscored 15 points in the third quarter, 39-24, and we can't really recover from that.
Yeah, we were just playing from behind.
Yeah,
ever since halftime, really.
Yeah, I mean you can't let teams outscore you by 15 points in a single quarter. That's unacceptable, especially when you're in the play-in like this, fighting for a chance to get to the dance, really. What did you see in the game that you think kind of was what led us to lose the game, and what do you think we need to do moving forward?
Well, I didn't get to watch all the game. I missed a lot of the first half. I did watch a good bit of the first quarter, though. And what I didn't like was that Lou Dort had about 90% of their points in the first quarter. And I knew
he was
that
popping
at
off.
that point that, it wasn't going to be a good game for the Pels if Lou Dort's scoring like that. But then I looked and I was like, well, he's really the only one scoring. He was kind of their only offense in the first quarter. And then as soon as I thought that, Josh Giddey and Shea just started doing their thing. And I knew we were in for a ride once those 3 guys started cooking. Hello, Mr. Lottober.
What's up, Mr. Lottober? Glad to see you in the chat, my buddy.
Uwe Blab, indeed.
Uwe Blab is a name that exists. But yeah, to your point about Lou Dort, in the first quarter, he was really just having his way. I think, he had 21 points in the first quarter, was 4 for 6 from 3-point. He was just doing whatever he wanted to in the first quarter. And, he ends with 27, which is crazy for Lou Dort. He only scored 20 points 14 times during the regular season. And then he comes into a playing game, scores 27 like it's nothing. Shea was kind of irrelevant in the first half almost. In the second, the second quarter he picked up a little bit, but Shea and Josh Giddey both really exploded in that second half. In the second half, they absolutely came to life. I think I saw something about how out of their, all of their points in the second half, 55 points between Josh Giddey and Shea were either assisted or scored. So those two, they just absolutely dominated in the second half. Two amazing playmakers who have the strength and the height to play like a wing and then also can hit mid-range and three-point shots. That's a great combo for Oklahoma. And, it's two players who are really fun to watch. So it's not like I'm, mad at them per se because they're really good players. And Shea has been an all-NBA level player this entire season. I think he was second in the NBA in scoring, maybe third. So, there were certain things the Pelicans needed to do to stop the Thunder in the second half, and they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, Che and what did I say?
Shea. The guy from 2K.
Yeah. Shea and Giddey are going to be a great combo for a long time if they stick together, along with all the young guys that the Thunder have that haven't been playing so much.
Second youngest team in the entire NBA.
Yeah, and they're already making playoff pushes like this. They're going to be a good team in a few years to come, and people are going to need to watch out for them.
Yeah, they have tons of really young players. They have tons of really good players, and they actually have 15 first-round picks over the next 5 years. So not only do they have really good young players right now, they're going to keep getting younger. They're going to keep getting better. And, if you look at some stars who are really wanting out, Damian Lillard has talked recently about if the Trailblazers don't have a plan to really push for a championship, he may have to reconsider his future. So a guy who we've seen stick with that franchise through thick and thin, maybe on his way out. You look at a guy like Luka, who has voiced his frustrations recently with the Mavs not even making the play-in. And they were a team who traded for Kyrie Irving midseason thinking they were going to make a championship push.
They just made things worse.
Yeah, really, it did. So you've got Luka, you've got Dame, you've got other players around the league who always could be on the move. You never know who's on the move. Kevin Durant got traded this season.
Yeah, a big trade.
Top 20 player all time, I would say, and he's on the move in the middle of the season, going from Brooklyn to Phoenix. So you never know who's on the chopping block. You never know who might get traded. And if we look at it, Oklahoma City Thunder has the assets to get anybody they want. If we're being honest,
they have the picks, they have the talent.
Yeah, if you
they
look
can
at
make
it,
some trades if they want to. But I think they like their team, and I think people know that they like their team.
Yeah, and you should like your team. You were the 10 seed. You beat the number 9 seed of New Orleans Pelicans team, who at one point in January was the 1 seed. So a very talented squad, to say the least. But that brings me to a guy that we have to talk about with this Pelicans teams, and that's Zion Williamson. A guy who can't stay on the floor. He's played maybe a third of the games in his career so far. I don't know the exact stat on that, but it feels about right.
Yeah.
He's never on the floor. He said before the play-in game that physically he's fine, but he's not going to play until he feels like Zion again, kind of alluding to a mental hoop that he had to jump through that he didn't feel ready to get through yet. We were missing Jose Alvarado as well, who said, they said within a week's time he may have been back had we made it to the first round. So it's tough with the injury bug. All year we had to deal with stuff between Jose. Brandon Ingram was out half the season. CJ needed thumb surgery, and he's getting that next week, even though he played most of our games for us, which shout out to CJ for, sticking it out and playing through injury to at least try to will us into the play-in, which he did.
Definitely showing these younger guys how to be a leader.
Yeah, and you can say all you want about CJ's performance on the floor. He definitely has his ups and downs because there are sometimes he will go off for 16 and a quarter, and you're like, yeah, this is the CJ we wanted from Portland. And then he'll have sometimes where he's just 0 for 6 from 3 and can't even make a layup. Yeah, and that's just kind of the experience we've had with CJ McCollum. But all in all, he's a great leader on the floor. He's the president of the NBA PA, so he's a very intelligent man. And he still averaged 21 points a game this year, so it's not like he's some scrub. But, specifically focusing on Zion, what do you do with him? like if you are David Griffin and Trajan Langdon, our VP and GM, what do you do with Zion this offseason?
I wouldn't really do anything this offseason. I'd kind of, he's still a young player. He hasn't been around that long. Let him get his feet under him first a little bit. I know, he's had his trouble with the injuries, and we've experienced the same thing with Michael Thomas. Very similar situation.
Yeah.
And so I think, once he's already proved that he's a great player in the games he's played. But if you can't stay healthy, what does that mean?
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily do anything this coming off season. I mean, maybe if, something arises and you get offered a great deal, maybe.
Now,
but I'd still like to see him at least one more year.
Now, like I was saying, like this is completely hypothetical. I'm going to give my opinion after I ask you this question. I just want to see what you say first. Like I was saying, the Oklahoma City Thunder have a ton of assets. If the Thunder come at you and say, hey, we'll give you, let's say they offer us 2 role players, like one of the Jalen Williams and maybe a center or something, maybe their backup center, and then they offer you like 4 first-round picks.
4
first-round picks, maybe, a solid role player and a young guy who could make a difference. Where does that discussion go? Is it immediately shut down? Is it something you think about? Is it something you take? Where do you go with that?
It's definitely not immediately shut down. And I'll also say that it's definitely not something you immediately take either, because with a player of this caliber, you always have to think over the decisions. And it is a great trade for the Pelicans, especially, going to the future. Depending on who they give us, I'd probably, think about it a while, but I'd probably give in and take the trade. But I know that as soon as we trade him,
he's going to be healthy and he's going to rock our world. Yeah,
MVP.
absolutely. Oh, without a doubt. And that's the problem with Zion, is that when he's on the floor, he looks like an MVP. I mean, when he was playing for us healthy for those, I think he played like 25 games this year. When he was healthy and playing to his full ability in those 25 games, he was averaging like 26.8 on 65% shooting. Like he's an absolutely absurd player. He is one of a kind without a doubt. But you're never going to see it if he can't stay healthy.
Exactly.
So from my perspective, I think Zion Williamson is one of the most talented basketball players in the league. When he's healthy, you can see that. But the health is such a big concern. It's like we have to figure something out, and we've got to figure it out soon. You can't have 3 more years of this. Is he going to play more than 30 games? Because it's an 82-game season, and he's not giving you half of that. I know he had 2 years ago, he played he ended up making the All-Star game, and he played something like, 52 games or something that season. But still, I mean, you're missing 30 games there. That's 30 games we could be pushing for a higher seed in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to watch.
And it's especially tough when we get to, these play-in games or the playoffs, and he's not on the court out there.
Yeah, and, as much as I want to be optimistic and say, Zion can figure it out, he's going to get conditioned right, he's going to come back from injury, he's going to stay healthy. I have no reason to think that right now, so I don't think that. I think there's going to be a point where you're going to have to either say, we'll find you somewhere to go, or you're like, it's going to either be we're trading you and you can be happy about it, or we're trading you and you can be pissed about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's this offseason. You can't give up on Zion, I don't think. It would be hard to give up on a guy who is a generational talent like that. But, I mean, if he has some random setback this summer and then we're coming into the next season and it's not looking like he's playing the first game after straining his hamstring. I mean, let's be honest here. Jose broke his leg and was going to come back before Zion because he pulled his hamstring. There's something there. Like, you can say whatever you want. Like I said, he was looking at his mental health, which, of course, look at your mental health. I'm not saying that's something that should be overlooked. But if Jose can come back from a broken leg quicker than Zion can come back from a pulled hamstring, there's something deeper there that needs to be unpacked.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's why I said I'd probably take the trade, especially if it's 4 first-round picks.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
What's the chat saying over there?
So after Uwe Blab, Soundman said, "I'll give you some assets."
Okay. Hello.
I appreciate it.
GTO maybe.
Ooh, the GTO? Is that an asset? Let us know. Lots back in the chat. He said, "You keep Zion," and then he immediately turned around and said, four first rounders is a lot. I'd do it.
Yeah. 4 first rounders is a lot.
And
I mean,
welcome Dustin. He's back in the chat.
I might be wrong, but I feel like Minnesota gave up 5 for Rudy Gobert. So if
And they
Rudy Gobert
lost.
gets 5, we might get like 9 from Oklahoma City.
And welcome Dustin. Glad to have you back in the chat.
Hello, Dusty.
He said Zion is never going to be healthy.
I would agree.
And if we're on the same page here, I'm still sore from Easter.
Okay. Hello. If Zion could be a guy who could play 60 games every year, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Which, you're missing 22 games there, but even if you go like under 500 in those games, like 20 out of 22 games, let's say you go 9-13, 10-12. With Zion, you're assuming you're going to hit about 60% of those wins. So it'll all balance out, and you'll probably be a top 3 to 4 seed in the Western Conference every year if Zion could just stay healthy enough to play 3/4 of the games.
Yeah.
But again, we have no reason to believe he can. I hate hating on Zion because he's such a talented player, and I know this isn't I don't think it's a personal thing for him, like hating on New Orleans or anything. But it still just hurts to have to watch it over and over and over. And it is very similar to the Michael Thomas situation, like you mentioned.
It is, but at the same time, it's much different than football because the season's a lot longer. There's a lot more games. So people always talk about playing a full, healthy season in the NBA. That's almost full of games in the NBA.
The only guy who doesn't do it is Mikal Bridges. He played in 83 games this year.
A unit.
There's 82 games in a season. He played in 83 because he played an extra because he got traded. Mikal Bridges is an Iron Man. Speaking about Iron Man and speaking about Mikal Bridges, I want him on the Pelicans. Okay, so that brings me to my last question I had here about the Pelicans. If you could change one thing about our team, whether it be trade a certain guy, what would you want in return? What position would you address? Maybe who you're looking at in the draft? What do we do with our draft pick? Anything. One thing to do with the Pelicans this offseason, what are you doing?
Well, like I talked about earlier this season when we talked about the trade, when the trade deadline was coming up, they did part of what I said, and that was get rid of Devontae Graham and bring in someone else. And they brought in Richardson, and I've liked the way he's played. He had a little off game last night.
I have not liked anything about what Josh Richardson has brought to New Orleans, to be honest with you. I haven't seen anything out of him that made me think he was anything better than Devontae Graham.
Agree to disagree.
But that's personal.
But another one, I still think they need to get rid of Jackson Hayes. While he's young, while people still value him, before he gets into any more trouble, whether it be, legal issues or personal problems.
Yeah.
I think that he is a young kid who, wants it all and will do anything for it, but I don't think that means the right things.
Hello. We were gonna touch on LSU baseball right after we finished with the Pelicans, but
Seems
we
like
interrupt
Jordan
this
Thompson.
news to let you know that Jordan Thompson hit a grand salami. I'm assuming we're in the second inning?
Yeah, it's got to be early.
Yeah, I mean it's very early in the game. Give us an update on that if you don't mind.
I'll pull it up right meow.
So, grand salami, Jordan Thompson. Hello, how you doing? But yeah, if I had to think one thing I would do for the Pelicans, which first of all, your Jackson Hayes point, our buddy Rebo agrees on that one. We were talking about that today. Is that you need to get rid of Jackson Hayes because he's gonna get big money from someone else just because of his athleticism.
Yeah, he's a great
and
athlete.
the potential.
Yeah, great athlete, great potential.
He's going to go get $12 to $13 million from, and Reese mentioned the Pistons specifically, and I was like, he is such a Piston. It'd be so dumb for the Pistons because they already have 4 centers, but
I don't think
he's such a Piston. He just looks like he would wear a Pistons jersey.
Let me think on that. I'll find a team.
But Jackson, I could definitely see us moving on from Jackson Hayes. I think Jonas is kind of an underrated part of what the Pelicans do. I think he's been really good at times. Last night, he grabbed every rebound possible, and that kept us in parts of the game. but I don't know if the way he plays basketball fits our team necessarily. And that's not a knock on Jonas. I think Jonas is a great player. I just don't know if he fits because a lot of what the Pelicans do is run the floor. They play a lot of the mid-range game between C.J. McCollum and Brandon Ingram. That's what we do is we play the mid-range. And coming off the bench, we have shooters. Jose can shoot. Trey Murphy is a shooter. That is what he does. And then Zion's super athletic when he's healthy down low that he's going to dominate the paint. So I'd like to see us get a guy who can maybe stretch the floor or a more positive defender. I think Jonas definitely fell behind on defense at times. So if we can maybe package Jonas and Jackson, this is what Rebo said, so I'm giving him all the credit here. I don't want to take any credit away from him. Rebo said maybe, package Jonas and Jackson for a guy like a Nicholas Claxton. Nicholas Claxton took a huge step this year. He ended up averaging something like 14 points. Was in the talks for Defensive Player of the Year for a long time over for the Nets. So he's obviously one of the best defenders at the center position, and he can score the ball. So it's definitely something you want to look at. And then, I'm off the top of my head, I don't know any other guy who, would fit maybe our salary situation and fit play style. But if you can get a center that can play defense and stretch the floor, I think that would fit the Pelicans perfectly and open up a lot more for our game.
Yeah, I know one guy that me and Rebo have talked about a lot. Miles Teller.
Miles Teller. Mustache Man.
Yeah.
From Top Gun.
Yeah.
Also played in Whiplash.
Yeah. Yeah, him. The drummer, yeah.
Also,
but the NBA version of him.
Miles Turner.
Miles Turner.
Okay, yeah. Very similar guys. I could see how you would get them confused. They look exactly alike.
As far as, a big defensive guy who can also stretch the floor, I think he is the best one in the NBA.
And I think he just got a contract extension, but he's not making, absurd amount of money, so we'd have to see how that fits salary cap wise. But a Miles Turner-esque player would be beautiful on the Pelicans, I think. Really open up the floor, give Zion room to work if he's healthy down there. Brandon Ingram is a great isolation basketball player. So if you give Brandon Ingram ISO with 3 options on the outside who can shoot, if you have Trey Murphy out there along with CJ and then whoever that center would be, plus you have perimeter defense. Brandon Ingram has stepped it up a little bit. Herb is out there on the perimeter, one of the best defenders in the league. Plus you would have defense down low. That is 3 levels on offense and defense. Be tough to beat.
Yeah, definitely. So you want a little update on the LSU
game?
Yeah,
let's talk about LSU baseball.
So it is now the top of the second. We are back on defense.
Okay.
It is 6-0.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 runs in the first inning.
Hey, Kentucky, what happened?
Jordan Thompson happened. But yeah, so we're top of the second right now, no outs. Skeens, it looks like he had a solid first inning, but he's starting to struggle now.
What? I'm wearing his jersey.
Gave up 2 hits back-to-back. Runners
Skeens,
on first and second.
Paul, what are we doing? Paul, come on.
However, it's only the second inning, and due up for the Tigers at the bottom of this inning is the one spot Gavin Dugas.
Oh, okay, so we'll be right back to the top of the lineup, probably score a couple more runs. 6 runs in the first inning is wild against a Kentucky team who I think is numbered 12 in the country.
We have a new,
I see that.
A new entry in our chat.
Is that Mr. Banks himself?
It is.
Father.
We love you too, Jalen.
We do love you.
Of course.
The one thing I don't love, though, is your comment where you say, we should sign Ben Simmons. So, if we're being honest, if you listen to anything I said about the Pelicans, Ben Simmons is the exact opposite of everything I said. He stinks. He's just bad. Just in general, he's just bad. And that's coming from someone who goes to LSU and was an LSU basketball fan when Ben Simmons was here and ended up getting drafted first overall. And I hate Ben Simmons. So,
yeah,
let's not do that.
I thought he was overhyped at LSU, and he still... Well, now he's hated a lot.
Yeah, he's not overhyped at all. He is very well, disliked.
Garbage.
Yes. He is well garbage indeed. So, glad to see LSU baseball is doing good. We're we're gonna make sure to check
we'll
up
keep
on
checking
it
it.
before we get out of here for
I'm
sure.
Between Dustin and Soundman, we'll
keep getting updates. So we're gonna move on to a team we talked about a lot last week. Kind of what happened since the last time we have been on here. Let's look more towards the future this time. Let's look at the draft for our New Orleans Saints.
Excellent.
So the Saints, every team gets top 30 visits for their draft. So, Bucky Brooks on the Move the Sticks podcast, him and Daniel Jeremiah, that's one of my favorite podcasts to listen to, especially around this time of the year when the draft is coming up. 2 former scouts, very talented guys. I like to listen to them. So
I'm going to stop you real quick.
Okay.
Of course, Jalen, you can definitely be a guest one day.
What kind of question is that?
We will pencil you in whenever.
Yeah. The only thing he's not allowed to talk about is the Saints because he's a Falcons fan.
He can talk about the Falcons all he wants.
No, he can't.
Yeah,
I'm not allowing that on here.
Insight from other teams.
Not the Falcons, though. Any other team, sure. Not the Falcons, bro. No, I'm just kidding. I'd love to see Jalen. He'd fit right in. But back to the Saints. Bucky Brooks was saying, like, teams use their top 30 visits. They don't do it for their top 30 prospects because then every team would want to see Bryce Young. Every team would want to see C.J. Stroud. Every team would want to see Bijan Robinson. They use it kind of strategically, like guys who they think will be there when they're going to draft, guys who they didn't get to see at the pro day or at the combine, guys who they think are getting overlooked, guys who they think fit their system. Just use different types of reasons for the top 30 visits. Mm-hmm. So this list I'm about to go through doesn't mean it's the Saints' top 30 players on their draft board. It means it's the 30 guys they brought in because they didn't see enough from them, whether it be combine, film, pro day, whatever the case may be. They wanted a closer look at these guys for whatever reason.
Yeah, they wanted a better look at a player that they realistically might draft.
Yeah. And so I've got a list here, and this is from SportsIllustrated.com.
Legit.
So I just, I'm putting my source out there in case anything is wrong. It's not my fault. So this is a list of the 27 players that the Saints have so far used their top 30 visits on, which means they still have, 3 more spots open. Don't know who or when those will be filled. But here's some guys that they have talked to so far. And forgive me on some of these names because some of them I do not recognize. And that's from a guy who studies the draft. So first name, great name. Wide receiver out of Ball State, Johannes Tyler. Johannes Tyler.
We get a Johannes Tyler in the chat.
Please, Johannes. Number 2, Joel Honigford, tight end from Michigan. Number 3, Jai Nunn-Liddell, cornerback, Kentucky State. That sounds like a Saints player right there. A hyphenated corner from a D4 school, probably. Yeah. Joe Fouché, safety out of LSU. And then I'm going to kind of go down the list and only mention the names who maybe I find interesting. Or
you got to say number 5.
Well, yeah, that's where I was going to start. Maybe guys I find interesting, guys who I think the Saints could draft, guys who maybe I'm surprised they brought in for a visit, something like that. So number 5, Devon Achane, running back out of A&M. I know you're a big fan of Mr. Achane.
He's such a great athlete.
He's a great athlete, super fast. I think the only problem with him is, like, is he an in-between-the-tackles kind of guy? Don't know, I guess. But the Saints got a better look at him. We definitely need some running back depth. We've got Jamal Williams. We've got Alvin Kamara. But after that, kind of questionable. So having a third guy and then he would be the second guy when Kamara inevitably gets suspended, wouldn't mind that. Next guy I'm looking at is a guy who I'm probably going to end up talking about later in something we do in a few minutes, and that's Adebaware, the defensive tackle / defensive end out of Northwestern. Very, very versatile player, can play inside, outside. If all things go to plan, I'll be talking a little bit more in depth about him, so I'm glad to see him in the Saints building. Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee, didn't allow any sacks last season after moving to the right side, blocking for a guy who's next on this list, Hendon Hooker, which...
Yeah, I would definitely love that. If
Hendon Hooker's there at 40,
yes,
there's no reason to pass him up. I love Hendon Hooker. I'm going to go on camera and say that now. I think he might end up being the third best quarterback in this draft. I know he's being looked at as the unanimous number 5, below Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. I think he is undoubtedly better than those guys.
Yeah, I think Will Levis, I think he's definitely got some NFL talent. His career will kind of depend on where he lands, really.
Mm-hmm.
But Anthony Richardson, I don't like him
Anthony
at all.
Richardson is, in my opinion, similar to Malik Willis last year, where it's like he's got all the talent in the world. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, he's super fast, athletic. But when it comes to throwing a football, like a quarterback does, he has not proven a thing. 58% completion percentage, only attempted just over 350 passes in college, while CJ and Bryce Young each attempted over 800. I haven't seen enough, and what I have seen I haven't liked.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big Anthony Richardson guy.
Yeah, I definitely did not expect him to be, projected to go in the first round when they started talking about mock drafts.
Yeah, definitely me neither. Next guy on the list also went to Tennessee. Another vital part of that offense, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver, super fast.
Yeah.
Very excited to see if the Saints may be looking at him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, another wide receiver, who's kind of been rumored as like the only guy who scouts have a number 1 round grade on. I've seen that report everywhere on social media. Is Jackson Smith and Jigba is like the only guy who's going to go in the first round as far as receivers go. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, especially when the mid to late 20s come around and you've got 4 teams who could easily pick a receiver. We'll see how that goes, but JSN, I think, is a great wide receiver. He may get talked about.
Number 17 right there?
Mm-hmm.
I would love.
Joey Porter Jr., corner out of Penn State.
I would love. However,
long, physical. Dad played in the NFL too. He's got the pedigree.
I think Pittsburgh is going to pull the plug and have the dynasty of the Porters.
The Joey Porter. Both of them. I think he might go before that too. I think Joey Porter is a great player.
He's such a good player.
I really like Joey Porter as well, so I'm glad you pointed that one out. And then the last guy I really want to talk about that the Saints brought in, Miles Murphy, defensive end out of Clemson. He was a guy who kind of was falling down boards. Nobody was really talking about him because he didn't do anything at the Combine. And then he absolutely blew up the pro day, and everything they measured at the pro day, he would have finished top 3 at the Combine for. Has a perfect build for a D end. He's basically stereotypical defensive end that you would want, and I've seen reports that he's basically locked into the top 15 now after being a guy people saw it, really late in the first round that the Saints obviously could get. But now he's kind of locked in the top 15. So I'm curious to see what Miles Murphy does, defensive end out of Clemson in the draft. But I like that the Saints brought him in just in case.
Looks like you're getting some heat in the comments.
Oh, heat in the comments.
First, Dustin said, how long are the visits?
What? Well, I guess that depends on the player.
And then it's a little bit blurry.
A little bit blurry,
Can't really
he says.
That username. But it looks like Killia.
Oh, Kyle. My boy Kyle. What's going on?
Yeah, I see the Kyle now. I said, no, it's cool, Bryce. We just want you to come to the game.
Listen, I said in the group chat I couldn't come. I put it out there that I could not come to the game. I was doing this. Yes, that's right. I skipped an LSU baseball game to do this. This is dedication to the grind. I am sorry, Kyle.
Since we're talking about Kyle, I'll give us a little update on the LSU game.
I apologize, Kyle. I hope y'all are having fun, but Kyle's one of my classmates at
Tell Kyle
LSU.
not to let him throw beer onto the field this time.
Yeah, Kyle, let's keep that under control, bud. Don't let the students get crazy. I know y'all are out there right now. A bunch of people from my class are out there, so I hope y'all are having fun. I'm sitting back on the couch waiting for y'all to get out.
Kentucky scored a run. It is now in the bottom of the second. So 6-1.
Okay.
Dugas is up to bat. Count as 1-0.
Adam said, off the dome, live from the box.
Eventually.
Could have been a possibility. We don't have that permission yet, so
we'll make it happen.
Don't you worry. We'll figure it out. Kyle can figure it out for us. Big old Kyle. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at with the Saints as far as pre-draft stuff. Now we want to get into like the meat and potatoes of the episode, I want to say.
Meat and potatoes.
Meat and potatoes. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a 3-round mock draft, each of us, on our own device. So we're not influenced by the other's picks. We're not influenced by the other's board. And, the simulation will make it fall 2 different ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 3-round mock drafts each. One, and the first, coming from the standpoint of what do you think the Saints are actually going to do? This is not what you would do if you were them. This is what you think the Saints would actually do if the board looked like this, based on maybe draft history, team need, that kind of stuff. And then we'll do the second one, and that one would be kind of our personal perspective of what we would do based on the guys we like. So let's go ahead.
Got it.
Let's go 3 rounds. We're only drafting for the Saints here. Doesn't matter who everybody else picks until it gets to our pick. And we'll go ahead and we'll start it up. Let's go through the draft first. We won't talk about who we're drafting while we're drafting them. We'll just draft them and we'll talk about it after. So I'm at my pick here at 29. I'm going to go ahead and start us off. I'll go ahead and draft my guys. You go ahead and draft your guys. We'll talk about it after.
Okay. Yeah, I did mine before because my phone was having a little issue with the website.
That's fine.
So I didn't want it to crash.
Well, I
just got it pulled up. So
I'm doing mine as we go. So maybe if you want to start on yours while I do mine.
So in the first round, pick 29. This is what I think the Saints will do. And asking around, a lot of people seem to think it's pretty set in stone that the Saints will take Mazi Smith, D lineman from Michigan.
Not a fan of Mazi
in the first
Smith.
round. I mean, I could see why we would do it because we did lose a lot of defensive linemen this offseason. So I'm not a fan of the pick per se, but I'm not completely against it. The guy I have and the one I would want them to do, I would much prefer.
Okay.
But moving
a little
on.
foreshadowing there, huh?
Oh, yeah. Moving on to the second round, pick 40. Guard out of TCU, Steve Avila. I know he's been talked about a good bit, coming up. He's a good player. I think there's better things available, but the way it fell multiple times, I did it a few times, and he was the guy that kept coming up. So I think, probably a good chance he'll be a Saint.
That's fair.
And then in the third round, when you pulled up that list of players who have gotten visits, I was so glad this guy's name was on here.
Okay.
Because I really want him, and I think it definitely is a possibility he could be a Saint, and that's Devon Achane with the 71st pick in the draft.
You are a big Devon Achane guy. We already talked about it, and I think you would live up to that because I think you are a big Devon Achane guy, and you would love to see him here.
Yeah, I mean, we all saw him in last game of the season against A&M, the amount of stiff arms he had on the Tigers defense. Reese, our boy Rebo, was not a fan of it, and then he was a big fan of him.
Yeah. He was indeed a big fan of Sir Achane.
While you finish up, I'll start reading read some chat. So Lionel Frankenstein said, Chad said, what's up?
There is no way he's with Chad right now. If he's with Chad and I'm here, I may have made a mistake.
If you are with Chad, tell him to give us a follow.
True.
And then Lott is not happy with what I think the Saints will do. He said reach and
with
reach
a
again.
lot of exclamation points.
Who were those reaches for? Was it Mazi Smith and Devon Achane?
Maybe so. Yeah, go ahead and clarify that. While you're figuring out what Lott is talking about, I'll go ahead and start us off with my prediction as far as the draft board goes. So in the first round, this is a guy we were talking about before we started here, and this is my one prediction wise. I have Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I think he is a big, strong, run-stopping D-end. If we're being honest, kind of reminds me of Marcus Davenport, who we just lost. He's got that stereotypical build. He can be a run stopper who also rushes the passer. I've seen a lot of plays of him working really well in the screen game, coming off the block, being able to attack either the running back or the receiver within the screen. So, really, I've been impressed with Anudike-Uzomah. So he's out of Kansas State, who played really well this year. So when you're on a good team, you're probably looked at a little bit higher by scouts. I didn't see him on that list of guys who came to visit, but he just sounds like a guy who could end up on the Saints. Talking about that, I have the Saints actually doubling down on edge in my predictions.
Okay.
It's not really a position we addressed in free agency. If you think about the positions we really need, it's one of the only ones we didn't really do anything with in free agency. We attached to interior D-line. We signed a couple linebackers. We re-signed Juwan Johnson as a tight end. Edge, we didn't really do anything. We lost and didn't replace. So I think, that's a place we could end up doubling down. And I have a guy who I said I was going to talk about in Adebaware out of Northwestern. That's his last name. I'm not going to try to pronounce his first name. Yeah,
Call him AA.
Yeah, double A out of Northwestern, edge rusher. He's 6'2", 265. I mean, he's got everything you want. I really like him. I've watched the tape. I like that guy a lot. Adebaware. We get 2 purple and silver teams who both have edge rushers with kind of unusual last names. I mean, sure, let's go Saints, baby. Who dat? But and then in the third round, I have us going tight end. This is a guy I was kind of surprised to see fall to the third round in this simulation. I feel like he kind of goes earlier than this most of the time. But since he's here, I thought we might as well take him. And that's Darnell Washington, tight end out of Georgia.
I like him.
I like him. I don't like him as a first-round pick.
No, absolutely.
I don't know how much I like him at 40, but I think I would love him at 71. He's mainly a run blocker at this point. Brock Bowers, tight end of Georgia, who will probably go top 15 next year because he's that special of a talent.
He is him.
Yeah, I mean, baby Gronk is what they're calling him for a reason. He looks like Gronk. He plays like Gronk. He's that. He's that guy. But Darnell Washington, mainly a run blocker at this point, but he did catch some passes. He's super athletic. He just hasn't. He hasn't really put it all together when it comes to the running the routes and catching the ball and yards after catch type stuff. So he's kind of still developing as a pass catcher, but when it comes to blocking, he is an absolute monster. So, if you run a 2 tight end set with him and Juwan Johnson's a former wide receiver himself, kind of put on some weight to become a tight end. Let him run the routes, let Darnell do the blocking, double tight end set, have a running back out the backfield, could be Alvin, could be Jamal, could be a guy we draft. That's a good look for the Saints. Taysom on the other side, I mean, talk about versatile.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of what we're looking at as far as, like, my predictions go. I think the Saints definitely need to address the tight end position behind Juwan Johnson, so that could be somewhere we go.
Wow. Another grand slam for the Tigers.
And out of a guy, both of our grand slams have not been out of our best players. Jordan Thompson he's been playing really well this season.
He has been playing, especially as of late.
Yeah. He's been kind of our only offense at points. But Braden Jobert,
11
grand slam, 11-1.
Wow.
See, Kyle, y'all don't even need me at the game, bro. If I was at the game, we may not be playing this well. Although, we are undefeated when Bryce is at the box this year. So
same with Mustang.
Mustang has been to 1 game, though. So, good ratio.
Yeah. And
I think I've been to like 4.
We have
still undefeated.
When Mustang is at the box, we have 1 win and 1 left fielder heckled.
And when Bryce is at the box, 3 right fielders heckled, 1 left fielder heckled, and a whole lot of runs scored.
That's what we like to see.
All right, so let's go into our who would we want to take with our picks. And of course, we didn't do trades in this one.
No.
Because that's just too much.
Especially on this platform, it's complicated.
Yeah, but
it's asking a lot.
In our pre-draft mock draft with all the boys here doing a full first round, there may be trades involved in that one because it's a person-to-person thing. Trade should be moving in that one, which we will address, of course. So
I feel like the Adams will try and work up plenty of trades.
Oh, I'm going to try to trade every pick I have just for fun.
Nobody's getting picks.
No. Everybody's just going to be like...
We end the mock draft. Nobody makes any picks. We all trade for picks next year.
Yeah. Nobody has a pick next year either, though, because they all traded them to somebody else who then traded it to somebody else, and then it's all in the void. But let's go to our who we want to draft, mock draft. I'll go ahead and I'll start us on this one. You give us you'll give yours after.
Okay.
So the way this board fell at 29, Michael Mayer was still available, and that's an easy pick for me.
Got to.
I like Dalton Kincaid more personally. Like if they're both there with the same pick, I'm taking Dalton Kincaid. But it's not such a long stretch that I wouldn't take Michael Mayer. I think he's still a great player. If they're both sitting there at 29, I'd go Kincaid. But let's say Kincaid goes, 26 to the Cowboys and Michael Mayer's still there at 29. It's no matter who else is on the board, it's going to be hard to pass him up because he's a very special player. Runs beautiful down the seam, catches the ball, not afraid to be physical over the middle of the field, which you want to see out of your tight end. And not only that, but there's nothing better than just another red zone threat, a guy who can put the ball in the end zone, and I think Michael Mayer is going to show that he can do that in the big leagues.
Yeah, I wanted to take him so bad, but every draft I did, he went
right before
Cincinnati right before us.
The second guy I have on here that I hope we draft is the same guy I had us drafting at 40 in the predictions, and that's Adebaware out of Northwestern. I've said his name like 14 times tonight, and it's because I'm a big fan of him. I think he's going to be a really good player at the next level. Kind of curious to see what he does as a guy who I've talked about a lot recently. I'm going to have to keep up with him no matter where he goes, just to make sure I was right. And then in the third round, I had a guy who was on that Saints top 30 visit list. So if he falls to 71, that would be absolutely insane for the Saints, considering they wanted him in the building already, and that is wide receiver out of Tennessee, Jalen Hyatt. If he falls to 71 and the Saints don't pick him, that's a problem. Maybe. I mean, before Hendon Hooker got hurt, Tennessee was looking unstoppable.
Yeah.
The only team that they lost to was Georgia, really, until Hendon Hooker got hurt, and then South Carolina was like, hey, we're pretty good.
Showed up.
Yeah. So I think Jalen Hyatt was his number one option, and on one of the best offenses in college football last season. Between Hendon Hooker, Darnell Wright, and Jalen Hyatt, three guys we've had in the building, three guys who are going to go probably in the first two rounds of this draft. Tennessee had a good team, and Jalen Hyatt was a big part of it. I would love him at pick 71.
Yeah, I agree with all of those.
Thank you. That makes me feel good.
I'm going to start off by saying I think that this draft may be one of the deepest, most talented drafts we've seen in a long time.
That's, I told somebody that the other day, is they asked me about my opinions on this draft, and I said the star-studded talent, like other drafts, maybe not there. Like to 2020 draft when we had Joe Burrow and we had Tua, and you were just looking at guys and you were like stud after stud after stud. I don't know if we have that this year, but what we do have is three solid rounds of guys who can contribute in the NFL.
Yeah, three. I'd say maybe 2.5 to 3 rounds of just guys that can almost be a starter.
Yeah, and when you draft a guy in the first round, you're expecting him to come in and start for you. And in my opinion, I think there's going to be a lot of guys who come in out of the first round and start substantially for their teams.
Even in the second round.
Play very well, even in the second round. Like guys like B.J. Ojulari are probably going to go in the second round. And if you ask me, B.J. Ojulari is going to be a really good player out of LSU. Super athletic, has that leadership mentality. He played so phenomenally for us on the field and had such a great attitude off the field. There's a reason he wore 18. If you don't know, LSU's 18 is a big tradition for a guy who's just in the locker room is the one who will hold you all together. And B.J. Ojulari earned that honor. So I know that from a character standpoint, he's got what it takes to make it on the next level. I think he's super special. And he's probably going to go mid-second round. So this is a really good draft.
That being said, I'll get into mine. With my first-round pick, I have the same guy who you took for which you think the Saints will take, and Felix Anaduke Uzama. Hope I said that right.
Great pronunciation on that.
Sweet. I'm terrible with names. But yeah, edge rusher out of Kansas State. 2021 season, he had 13 sacks, and he played in 13 games, so he averaged a sack a game. This last season, he only had 8, but only having 8 sacks in a college season is still a good
8
bit.
sacks in 13 games, 14
games?
Like, that's still a pretty good stat line to have.
So he gets after the quarterback, and he gets after him fast because he had plenty of quarterback pressures and quarterback hits, along with a more than handful of TFLs.
Yeah, and you're playing in the Big 12, which is a pass happy conference who gets the ball out quick.
Plenty of good linemen come out.
So you're not playing in the easiest conference to create pressure. Yeah, you're not playing in the Pac-12. So I agree with that pick. I think he would be awesome.
round 2 pick 40, I have the center out of Ohio State, Luke Weipler. I really like what I've seen out of.
I do want you to explain this to me, is why do we take a center?
Yes, we have Eric McCoy, but who's after him?
That's a great question. I don't
Exactly. And Saints linemen are very
Known to get hurt.
notorious for getting hurt. And so I think, just first and foremost, having a guy back there who can step up and play.
Yeah.
And I also think that his talent is substantial enough to where he could play any of the 3 interior O-line positions.
And that's something that the Saints really need with Glassbones, Andrews, Pete. You've always got to be ready to sub somebody in on the line. We've used guys like James Hurst and Calvin Throckmorton to pick up at tackle and guard whenever guys get hurt.
Done their job
decent
better
enough.
than expected. Yeah.
Right. But I kind of get it. And not only that, but Eric McCoy has some time playing guard. So if Andrews Pete gets hurt or Cesar Ruiz gets hurt, you can kick McCoy out to guard and throw Weipler in as your starting center. So I get it. I would like to see us go somewhere else as far as need base goes, but it is a very Saints pick from the, hey, we need this in case something happens type mentality.
Yeah, it's a pick that I wouldn't necessarily be mad about. I could see it. I could definitely see the Saints taking him, and I probably would respect it. And then third and final pick, one of my favorite players in this draft. Running back. Yes, I doubled up on running back in the 3rd round.
I know who you're about to say, and I'm so excited about it.
Running back out of UCLA, Zach Charbonnet.
Love Zach Charbonnet.
If any of you remember, not this past season, but the one before when LSU played UCLA, during the hurricane, he torched us.
Yeah, he did. He tore us up. He's a really, really good player. We've kind of all, I think our whole entire friend group has kind of all fell in love with Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah. And Zach Charbonnet has a very similar play style to Devon Achane, whatever you want to call him. Very speedy, very quick, can change direction.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm kind of looking at his stats here just to, back up what you're saying because I like him too. I mean, he ran a 4.5, so I mean, it's not out of the box fast, but definitely quick enough to get it done. 37-inch vertical, 10.2 broad jump, so he's got athleticism. And then he ranked 4th in the FBS last year with 6.97 yards per carry. Every time you hand him the ball, he's going to get you 3 yards away from a first down. So definitely a really, really good player. Second-team All-American as an all-purpose player. First-team All-Pac-12. Had 1,400 yards last year, 14 touchdowns. And he brings it out of the backfield, too, with 37 receptions at 320 yards.
And that's kind of why I like him more than Achane. I mean, it may just have been the difference in the systems, because UCLA does throw the ball more. But I like a pass-catching back.
Yeah. And I think he brings not only the pass catching, but that in between the tackles running that you need when you have Alvin Kamara, who's such a good receiving back and so good at the agility and the balance wise. Mm-hmm. If you hand off Zach Charbonnet and he runs right behind that guard, he's gonna put his head down and run over people because not only does he have the pass catching and the agility, but he also has power. And looking at his NFL comparison from Lance Zierlein, a guy who's been on NFL.com and an NFL contributor for a long time. He says A.J. Dillon, and I really like that for Zach Charbonnet. If Zach Charbonnet can be an A.J. Dillon level player, I would love to have him in a Saints uniform.
Definitely. But yeah, I chose Charbonnet over Achane because when I looked at our running back room, I feel like he fit better than Achane did with the Kamara and Jamal Williams. He was kind of right in between both of them, and that's what I liked about him because Achane is more similar to Kamara than Charbonnet is, and his speed, and he's like a speed back instead of kind of this hybrid power back that Charbonnet is. So that's why I went with him.
No, I like it. I see Dustin over there saying no love for Brian Brzee. I'm not a Brian Brzee guy. I think Kalijah Cansey is a fantastic player. Unfortunately for us, he did so well in the combine and his pro day that he's not going to make it to 29. He's just super athletic. I mean, it's so easy to call him Aaron Donald because he's the same height. He's around the same weight. They both went to Pitt. They play the game the same way. They both had amazing combines. Like, it's just so easy to call him Aaron Donald Part 2, which would Aaron Donald's the top 5 defensive player of all time.
All time, yeah.
So, you'd love to have Kalijah Cansey. And I know Forsyth is in love with Kalijah Cansey. He's been talking about him for forever. So I think he's a really good player. But Brian Brzee just... like, I don't have any way, like, I don't have any feelings towards him. Like, he missed some time due to some personal issues, which, of course, isn't his fault. And, he had to deal with a lot of hard things, and he's come through it. So congratulations to him. That's awesome to be able to fight through some of the stuff he's had to fight through with his sister and everything. But as a football player, I mean, I haven't fell in love with him from what I've seen.
Yeah, that's fair. I could back that up.
Moving out of football and into our last segment here on the show, something we do every time, and that's B&B's Bets of the Week.
Let's go.
So we're looking at a futures bet here. We talked about Pelicans basketball. Let's talk about basketball in general. Who do we take for both the Western and Eastern Conference Finals as well as the NBA Finals? So we went on FanDuel, our favorite sports book, and looked at the odds, who we would take to win each one. And we're just gonna break it down for you quickly here, along with the lines in case you're interested in what we say. So why don't you start us off with your Western Conference and Eastern Conference pick? I'll do my Western Conference and Eastern Conference, and then we'll give our NBA champion.
Sure. I have to look at it because I don't remember who I picked.
That's sad.
Now I do.
Yeah. It's right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the Western Conference, I think we both have the same matchup.
Yeah, in the Western Conference Finals, I think we both have Phoenix Suns versus Memphis Grizzlies.
And I have Memphis.
And I have the Suns. I think
either of those teams can win that game.
I don't know if it's still true, but I'm pretty sure that at one point they were undefeated with KD in their lineup like a couple weeks ago, and that was like 14 games. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Paul, Devin Booker,
that is
Kevin
an all-star
DeAndre
team
Ayton
lineup.
Yeah. And if Kevin Durant has proven anything, it's that super teams can win championships. Shout out Golden State.
Yeah.
So I'm going with the Suns. I know it's an easy pick, and they have the highest odds, or the lowest odds, actually. Odds are a weird thing to try to define, whether high or low. They have the shortest odds at plus 190. You would make the least amount of money by betting on the Suns.
Yeah, I went with the Grizzlies because I wanted to see a fun finals. Really.
That's fair, and which we're going to see if your Eastern Conference team gets in. And the Grizzlies are at plus 700 to win that conference. And I think in the Eastern Conference we have the same matchup as well, and that would be my Boston Celtics. I have them winning the Eastern Conference Finals, and their odds are at plus 170. The second highest, or second shortest odds at winning the Eastern Conference Finals. Give them your Eastern Conference Finals pick. This was really interesting to me.
I have the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Love the way you said that.
Bet you do. Yeah, I was looking at the bracket earlier, and with their road, I think they could definitely make it to the conference finals.
They play Milwaukee in the second round, given that both teams win. And Milwaukee's an interesting team because, I mean, they're the 1 seed, so obviously they're really good. But for some reason in my brain, I just think the Cavs match up well.
I think the Cavs match up really well against Milwaukee.
And that matters in the playoffs.
It definitely does. That's because we did not want to see Pels Grizzlies.
No, I would have rathered Pels Nuggets than Pels Grizzlies, and the Nuggets are the higher seed. So I think matchups are really important in basketball.
Very important, especially in playoff basketball. That's why I took the Cavs to beat the Bucks. It's also why I'm going to take the Cavs to beat the Celtics in the conference finals.
I do like how we kind of agree on what teams are going to make it, though. That's pretty cool, considering there's 8 teams in each conference.
16
total teams, and we're picking the same 4.
So my finals would be Memphis, Cleveland.
Yeah, And so Eastern Conference Finals odds, mine are at plus 170 for the Celtics. Yours are at plus 1,800 for the Cavs. So you probably should put some money on that yourself, just to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And then for NBA champion, I have the Boston Celtics. They made it there last year, couldn't get it done. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, for me, are the best 1-2 combo in the league. And you can look at teams like the Bucks, who have Giannis and Drew. You can look at Steph Curry and Klay in Golden State. Fox and Sabonis have had a great year in Sacramento. Jokic and Murray.
I would love
Ingram
to see
and Zion. I'm putting Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown up there with the best of them.
I would love to see Sacramento make a run at this.
Oh, that would be awesome. I don't know if they're gonna make it out the first round because they have to play Golden State, unfortunately, which it's hard to beat Stephen Curry in the playoffs.
Steph Curry in the playoffs is a whole other animal.
Yeah, so I'm going Celtics to win the finals. I think this is the year they get it done. They can do literally everything on the floor. They can shoot threes. They play phenomenal defense, and they have the deepest bench in the league. So give me the Boston Celtics at plus 350 to win the NBA championship.
I love the Boston Celtics to win, especially for you. I know you've been.
I've been liking the Celtics.
Your cousin from Boston.
My cousin from Boston, Tom Cruise. I've been liking the Celtics for basically since I started paying attention to basketball.
Yeah.
So they've always been my second team behind the Pels/Hornets. So,
but yeah, I definitely think Boston has more than a chance to win this thing.
Yeah.
They got there last year, couldn't get it done.
And they have the third shortest odds to win the finals at plus 350. The only teams above them are the Bucks and the Suns.
Yeah, I think they definitely could make a run at it and win the whole thing. However, I gotta be different.
You always do. That's one thing about you, Mustang.
So I'm going with my Western Conference champion in the Memphis Grizzlies to win it all.
Gritty team.
Very. A gritty matchup in the finals.
Cavs versus Memphis would be, from a casual fan perspective, not great because it's not two small market teams, two teams that, they have John Morant and Donovan Mitchell as far as star players goes, but there's no MVP candidates on the floor. There's no larger than life characters on the floor. It would be two really good basketball teams facing off in the finals. And if you're a true basketball fan, Memphis versus Cleveland would be such a fun series to watch.
It would kind of remind me of when Toronto won.
Yeah.
That's what it would kind of remind me.
Well, Golden State was in that series, so you couldn't really look at it from the same way you're looking at this one. But if Memphis were to win, you'd look at it the same way where the Raptors won, where it's just a well put together squad with a really good coach that ended up coming out of the championship. So I don't like Memphis as a Pelicans fan. I don't like Memphis, and I don't like John Morant. I think John Morant is not a great human being.
Well, no, he's not. But he is a great athlete.
He is. He's a phenomenal athlete. He plays basketball very well, but off the court, I don't like him.
No.
And I don't like a lot of the other guys that are on Memphis, like Dylan Brooks might be my least favorite player in the league behind Draymond Green. Because just the way he carries himself.
You mean to tell me he's in front of Jay Crowder?
I'd rather Jay Crowder be a Pelican than Dylan Brooks. That which is crazy to say because Dylan Brooks is actually a really good NBA player. I just hate Dylan Brooks. So I don't like Memphis, but they're a really good team. So if we see Grizzlies Celtics, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be a great matchup too. That's the 2 seeds.
I think any combination of these four teams would be a good series.
And of course, you've still got the Bucks, who are a really good team. You've got the 76ers in the East.
Got the Nuggets, who can never get it done in the playoffs. We didn't even talk about the Nuggets really, who are the number 1 seed. Yeah, because they always choke in the playoffs.
They do. And then the Warriors are the 6th seed, but some would argue that they have the easier side of the bracket. Not having to face the Suns or the Clippers or the Nuggets. They'd be going against the Kings. If they make it out of the Kings, they'd face either the Lakers or the Grizzlies. So the Warriors can always make a run too. Yeah. So that's the great part about the NBA. You never really know who's going to make it. We, of course, all have our feelings, but we'll see how it actually goes. And that was wrapping it up for OTD tonight. Fun episode. Good stuff to talk about. We talked about the Pels, talked about LSU baseball, talked about the Saints, what they may do in the draft, and we're going to keep on talking about the draft going into next week. when we will have another mock draft. Not sure of the exact format yet, whether it's a full first round between us two, have some extra people on to talk about the draft, keep on going with the Saints rhythm. We'll see where it goes. But the draft is approaching us. It's 2 weeks from today. Super excited, and just excited to keep on seeing sports happen, and excited to keep on sitting on this couch. The boys on Bright Side coming to you off the Dome Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for watching. You can come back and watch us anytime off the Dome Sports Podcast on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on Facebook to keep up with us at all times. Off the Dome Sports Podcast on Facebook, as well as off the _Dome Pod on Twitter. And that is all of our social medias besides Twitch, which is OTD Sports 9. So you can watch us on Twitch, watch us on YouTube, keep up with us on Facebook and Twitter. And that's going to do it tonight for Off the Dome.
Yeah.
Any final remarks from you, Mr. Mustang?
Time to go get drunk.
I'm going to drink water.
Gotta watch out for him.
Peace out.